Dark Souls Remastered. Now, this was released across all platforms, but the reason I'm specifically discussing it here is because the original 360 version of Dark Souls is backwards compatible on the Xbox One, which really calls into question the value of the remaster. The main consideration is the frame rate, and if the promise of a stable 60 FPS is enough for you, then the remaster sells itself. Recently, Digital Foundry put together a fairly comprehensive frame rate test for Blighttown, one of, if not the most notorious areas in Dark Souls. Blighttown in the original game has huge frame rate problems. This is bad in and of itself, but couple that with the demanding gameplay, timed drops and enemies that swarm you, it increases the challenge in a completely unintended way. And the original game being played on an Xbox One or an Xbox One X will still run into these issues. Throwing more powerful hardware at it won't do the trick. This area, as well as others, is simply unoptimized. So already we are seeing an incentive to pick up the remaster, because whether you have the Xbox One X or the original Xbox One, Dark Souls Remastered will run at a smooth 60 frames. This is in addition to the improved lighting, ambient occlusion, and increases in resolution. Technical details aside, if you have never played Dark Souls, then absolutely pick up the remaster. If you are coming from having played Dark Souls 3 first, then expect a strange learning curve. The original is far slower with its combat and pacing. Or maybe slower isn't the right word, rather each input you make feels more deliberate. Then you have the interconnected world, which elements of this do still exist in later games, but not to the extent of Dark Souls. The entire world loops in and around itself, making complete geographical sense. It's a really hard thing to describe without actually having experienced it yourself, but the first time you unlock a shortcut and loop back to Firelink Shrine, your brain will take a moment to piece it together. Dark Souls is shortcut pornography. There is a lot more to talk about here, but we have other games to talk about, and honestly, saying too much would take away from anyone's first experience with Dark Souls. Give it a try, and praise the sun. I loved the original State of Decay, which really surprised me as much as anyone, because I hate zombie games. And by 2013, the market was already completely oversaturated with zombie games. They bore me, they're overplayed, they're uninteresting, they're done. So what did State of Decay do to keep me interested? Well, in each interaction was a delicate balance of risk and reward. You need resources to fortify your base, so you need to set out on searches to gather materials. Go in the daytime and the zombies are manageable, but they can spot you easily. So go at night, and they have a harder time finding you, but when they do, they are much more deadly. Searching a cabinet takes a long time, but it's quiet. You can speed up the process, but that will create noise and attract zombies to your location. And something I loved most of all, in an era of endlessly gunning down waves of the undead, firing a gun should be an absolute last resort, because the second you pull that trigger, every enemy for miles will converge on your position. Now, State of Decay 2 obviously maintains these features and adds some quality of life improvements, but it's currently sitting at a 68 on Metacritic. Now, I don't like review aggregates like Metacritic, because a 68 would suggest that State of Decay 2 is alright, not bad, decent enough with all the review scores averaged. Yet one look at the individual reviews will tell you a completely different story. You have near perfect scores to unfortunately low scores, some expressing happiness with the experience, others struck with several severe game-breaking bugs. It seems that the experience you get from State of Decay 2 will largely depend on how lucky you are with these bugs. I want it to do well because I think the series is a really refreshing change of pace to most zombie games, but it might be worth holding off until the problems are, hopefully, patched out. And finally, releasing at the very, very nearly end of the month, we have Agony, a survival horror game set in hell, playing as a tormented soul seeking escape. I've mentioned before how much I love horror games, so I've been really looking forward to this. However, there was one piece of information that was recently revealed that I find quite strange. As Agony is set in hell, it will be a rather gruesome experience. Nothing unexpected or shocking there, most games are. However, there is a lot of sexual violence, well, sexual content in general, which means that Agony will be censored on consoles. The PC release will remain intact. However, without this censorship, Agony would receive an adults-only rating, although we have no such equivalent here in the UK, which means it simply wouldn't be allowed to release on consoles. There are no details as to what exactly is being censored, but it is a necessary evil to have the game release at all. So it will be interesting to see how graphic and explicit Agony ends up being after the censorship.